what you see right here in this image, um, which is the widget factory. So as you can see, our factory is just lovely. I do not know how this graffiti artist got up this high, but hey, whatever. Anyway, so we're going to create this site. I want you guys to look at, I've mentioned this in other tutorials that I've done, but I want you to look at the structure of the web page. If you do your mock-ups first, digitally or hand-drawn, you can structure your pages so much faster. I mention this all the time. Just please do not start off, just coding. It'll take you longer. If you look at something and you design it and lay it out, you can look at something and make it faster. So anyway, so let's look at this page. Up here at the top, we have a nav bar. Okay, and you have the widget factory name over here in the navigation. Here you have, I'm going to call this the header. That's where the image is. A lot of people might call that a scroller area or whatever, but this, for us, we're going to call this header. This is going to be the subheader where the home is. You have your content area down here where this content will change. And then you have your footer area. So if we look at this, let's break this down to the smallest factor, right? So you have one container that centers everything on the stage. So that's one. Okay. Then you have three elements on the stage that all look the same, and that's the brown bar. Okay. So that's an element that we can style with one class in CSS. Okay. Then you have the content area. Then you have the header. So now that we kind of know what this is doing, we can lay it out. We need a container that holds everything. We need a class that styles the three bars. Okay, and then we need the content area and image. Pretty easy, right? So you have container, nav, header, sub, content, and footer, and then you need a class that styles all three of these components. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to use Dreamweaver for this tutorial. As you've noticed in the past, that's what I always do. It's not my editor of choice, by the way. I use PHP Storm for my professional projects. But if you want to use something close to PHP Storm and not pay for it, that would be Aptana. That does a good job. There's a lot of other free ones out there. But Sublime Text is a good one, but you have to pay for it. You don't have to, but you should. Anyway, you can use whatever you want to do this stuff in. I just use Dreamweaver. A lot of people, beginners trust Adobe. So anyway, that's what we're going to use. So here we go. We're going to actually create a site. Now, why do I do this in Dreamweaver? I like to do this because it keeps all my files in one area. And what I mean by that is I can see them all inside of Dreamweaver. And I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to find this. Let me see, 215 widget factory. So I'm going to make this my root folder right here. Okay. And I need to specify my image folder. Now I clicked on advanced settings and that's it. I don't click on any of these other ones right here. Default image folder. Go here. And this is what I mean. So Dreamweaver now knows that widget factory folder is that's my root folder. So it'll always look inside of here first. So then I just select my image folder. Okay, now you can see that anytime I click on this file button, I can see all the files that are inside of my widget folder. I like that. I don't want to go search for it every single time that I have to create something. I want Dreamweaver to know where my site is. And that way when I create files, I don't always have to go search for them or browse for the folder to put them in. Okay, it just makes it a little easier. By the way, these images, I'm going to post them in a zip folder. I'll try to do the finished product as well, so you can see it. But I normally don't like to put the finished product up there because a lot of people just copy and paste, and I want you guys to work this out for yourselves. So, also, if you guys do like my tutorials, please sponsor me. Below in the description, there's a link to Patreon. Please sponsor me, even if it's $1. It helps me, and I'll get these ads off of YouTube. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Enough self-promotion, right? Okay, we're going to create an HTML page. If you've watched my other tutorials, first two things I like to do is give it a title, because these are the easiest things to forget, and save it. And we're going to call this index. Now, I've seen this a lot in the past. Because index is basically your home page, you do not name this home. It has to be named index, all lowercase. By default, when you go to widgetfactory.com or whatever you're going to, you don't have to put the index.html. It's by default will look for that file. If that, that's the reason why you name it index.html. So we're going to save it. Now, knowing that we've structured our page before, looking at it right here, looked looked at the structure, we know that we can go ahead and lay a lot of this stuff out. We know that we have a div with an ID of container. And I always like to close my containers, right, or my divs or sections or any tags right when I make it. Okay, and then we know that we need a nav up here at the top. Okay, so let's just go ahead and add the nav. I'm just going ahead and close these. The next thing you know, we need a header. That's where the factory image is going to be. So we're just going to name this header. Okay. Next thing you know, we need the subheader, right? So I'm going to give this a div here. Now you can make these sections if you want to. That's up to you. Okay. Close that div. Okay. The next thing we need is a content area, right? So we're going to give this content. Now, because we're going to make multiple pages, because we're structuring this one page first and then doing the rest, you should be able to just do a save as. And then after content, we're going to put a footer in there. Okay, so now we have our page structure laid out. Okay, now we know we're going to have to style these. So let's go ahead and create a style sheet. I'm going to come over here and create a new CSS style sheet. First thing I'm going to do is save this style sheet. I'm going to name this styles. Now, you guys know that I like to keep my projects organized, so I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder called CSS, and I'm going to save this file inside of that folder. Okay, so if you come over here to our files in Dreamweaver, you'll see that we have a CSS folder, and the styles are inside of there, right there. Okay, so it just keeps it organized. All right, so let's go ahead and lay some stuff out. First off, only use this star. You guys may have seen me use this a lot. I just use this to set the margin. Okay, and I'm going to actually, if you don't know what this will do, I'm going to wait for just a minute. Okay, and we're going to need the body. We're going to have to style the body at some point. So now I'm just structuring my CSS. Okay, now we have a nav. Okay, so we have a nav in here. Okay, we have a header. We know there. Okay, we also have a subheader. Now, up here, you'll notice that we're styling the elements tags, right? Down here, our container is an ID, so we have to put the hashtag in front of it. Okay, and then after the container, okay, actually the container is before any of this. So let's come up here. I like to do it in order. So we have the container, and inside the container you have nav, and then you have header, and then you have subheader. By defining these all first, we'll make Dreamweaver know about them, so it'll be easier to implement them later. Okay, so then you have the content area. Okay, and then after content, we have the footer. So we have our basic structure for our CSS. Now, inside of here, there's a couple things if we look at the image. One is we know that this container is centered. Now, in this example, it is 960 wide. My screen resolution, so you guys can see this bigger, I've had to make it a little bit smaller, so I'm going to make my width of this container a little bit smaller, and it's going to be 800 pixels. Okay, and you can actually do a max width if you wanted to, so we can try to keep it responsive a little bit. Now that we have a width, we're going to center it. Now, in order to center something, you have to set the width, and you set the width to 800 or whatever you want it to be, and then you set the margin to 0 and auto, and that way it will center. Now, in order to do a little bit of testing, we actually, let's just give it a background color. Okay, and pick anything you want. In here, I'm just going to pick this light blue. You won't see this color, by the way. And because by default a div has no height at all, we have to give it a minimum height in order to see this. Okay, so now we have the width. Okay, you need to set a width to center it, or it's just going to go 100%. And the max width means that the maximum width of this div will ever be is 800 pixels. Okay, if you just set the width, means it's going to stay 800 pixels regardless of whatever the browser size is. Okay, we don't want that. We want it to only go to 800 width, but we can let it shrink if we want it to. Okay, now you need the margin 0 auto, and that centers it. Then we need the background color and the min height so we can see it. So let's go over and see what we've done. First things first, we need to link this. Now, you can do it a couple different ways in Dreamweaver. You can come over here to CSS and then click on this link button. But I'm going to tell you that Dreamweaver is notorious for not linking your file inside of there. So just don't even try to do it. Just get used to typing this out. You can browse for it. type in there, and the type is that. We put the relationship in here, and it's a relationship is a style sheet. Okay, and this a link tag is a self-closing tag, so we just close it. Now it's linked. Okay, so as soon as we can click on anything else, we should see our style sheet pop up here. Okay, so let's just click on files, and you'll notice that now in this top tab we have our file, so we can close this if we wanted to. Okay, let's view this and see what happens. View this in Firefox. Now you'll see the big blue box. This is our container. Now you'll notice this has a margin at the top. Because we're centering this, we're not really worried about the margins on the left and right, but I hate this margin at the top, and it's by default with the browsers, and that's why you'll see a lot of people just automatically reset these margins. So I'm just going to reset the top, and you'll notice that once I do that, I went in here and put it in the star. That's the only thing you put in the star. Don't do anything else right now. Come back and refresh, and you'll notice that that took that margin away up at the top. Okay, so we got that away. Now our site's going to be right up against the top. All right, so we got our container. It's growing. Let's look at a couple other things that we know we're going to need. Okay, the text is all white. That's on the whole page. Nothing's black. So let's go ahead and inside the body, we'll put color, and we'll make it white. Okay. Now, all the font will be white except for the links, and let's go ahead and do some of those. So the anchor tag, we're going to style our anchor tags, and we're going to make those color of white. Okay, and they also have no underline underneath them, so let's just go ahead and give it a decoration of none. Now we have not added the links yet. We're just setting the styles first. Okay, so we got that. Here's the links. They're going to be white, and they're going to be with no underline. Okay, so we got the white for the whole font, got the anchor tags being white. Now let's make this brown bar class. Okay, you could do a hover if you wanted to, but we're just keeping this short. Okay, brown bar. Now a couple things that you notice, all of them are about 35 pixels tall, so that's perfect. So let's just give them a height 35 pixels. Okay, now you're going to notice that in order to center the text in this line, you need to do a line height. And the way this works is you just set it to the same as the height, and that will center your text vertically. Okay, and now we need a background color. And we're going to find this dark brown here. Okay, and now all we have to do to make these class is to add them to our code. So the nav bar has this, right? Class, brown bar. The subheader has it, so we just add that class to it. And the footer is also styled that way. Okay, brown bar. Now when I refresh this in Firefox, it's going to look like just one big chunk of brown. Okay, but it's not. So let's refresh this. There's actually a header, there's a subheader, and there's a footer here. It's just we have nothing dividing them up, so they're stacked against each other. But we're going to add some content right now. So in our nav, let's go ahead and add the links. Now notice I'm stair-stepping and formatting my code, all right? So in this example, we're just going to do just the pound symbol. Actually, since this is the home, we can actually do this. Okay, and then we just put home and close it. And then we can copy and paste this. Okay, let's do it 4 times. This next one's going to be about. I think this next one is contact. And this last one, let's just, if we make it just like the images, it's products. Okay. Okay, and now I'm just going to take these other pages out because I'm not linking anything, and we can put the hashtag in there or the pound symbol, and that just basically will let the link act like a link, but it won't go anywhere. Because if you actually put a name of a file in here and you haven't created it yet, it's going to give you a 404 page, so it's not going to look right. But this won't do that. Okay, so now we have our other 3 pages. And if we want to create an about page,